This is Don't Mind Me, I'm Different. And I'm your host, Ron Sowers, here to teach you how to put a foot in depression's ass and turn ADHD from a perceived weakness into a superpower, where you can be the hero in your own story. Let me be your guide to join in the legions of Avengers just like yourself. Speak out and break the chains of this stigma. So you'll be the one at your job that people come to instead of running away from. Take back your life and own your difference. Just a quick disclaimer, I'm just a guy with ADHD and depression. I am not a professional. So if you are struggling with these, depression especially, please seek out professional help before it's too late. Hey, my ADHD warriors, welcome back. It's episode 22 of Don't Mind Me, I'm Different. I'm your host, Ron Sowers, and I'm here with Shannon D. Silva. And she talks about how she's used strengths and mindfulness, namely joy, kindness, and bravery, to not only overcome breast cancer, but to thrive. And now she has her very own podcast where she talks about helping other women to defeat breast cancer on their journey, and it's called Breast Cancer Reimagined. So grab your favorite earbuds and check it out after you check this one out. For me, I have like a real big affinity for mindfulness and what it's done in my life. And I brought on Silva because she's a fellow podcaster. Shannon, you have a unique experience with mindfulness and character strengths. Could you describe how that's affected your life and like what that's like?
Sure. Thank you so much, Ron. I'm so excited to be here. So thank you for inviting me. In terms of mindfulness and character strengths, one way that I've applied it to my life and it's made such an impact is when I was navigating my breast cancer journeys. Mindfulness really helped me to just be
Mm.
present to my experience and not push it away, not to resist it, but to really just accept what was happening. And then that really enabled me to decide how I wanted to navigate my breast cancer journey. And that is where character strengths came in to play because my character strengths help me to use my perspective to frame my experience as an opportunity to
Yeah.
learn and to grow. It helped me to just really dive into gratitude and just be grateful for the good things that were happening, even though I had breast cancer. So, mindfulness and character strengths have really played a huge part of my life, especially again as I was navigating breast cancer.
That's awesome. One of those things is like I'm actually working on that character strength this week is gratitude, which is
Mm,
can be hard because like I'm often like I deal with depression. Like
mhm.
it's something that's a part of my life, and you know it has its benefits, but it also is like it's days where I'm just like I just don't want to like I want to burn everything down and that I've created. And like I notice it when my love of learning is like
Mhm.
it's dark, and that's one of my signature strengths. So it's like even when I'm excited about it, I'm like I don't want to learn about that stuff. I forget, I'm I'm not feeling it. So how do you
Mhm.
what's your like secret Silva method for like getting more gratitude? Like how did you tap into that, especially in those dark, I mean, I'm sure being diagnosed with breast cancer was scary.
It was. I think for me, I really got clear about the power of gratitude when my dad was in hospice care for colon cancer back in 2011. And something that I remember when I went back down to San Diego when this was going on, something that I realized is every time the doorbell rang, I would just burst into tears. And of
Wow.
course, I was really just devastated because I knew my dad was going to die. And that was just really hard to process. But one day when the doorbell rang and I recognized, I was mindful, I was aware that I was crying, I got really curious because I wanted to explore what was really behind those tears.
Hmm.
And what I realized is that it was gratitude. So when someone came to the door, whether it was a hospice doctor or a nurse or a neighbor or family or friends, I just felt so much, makes me cry, think about it. I felt so much
Yeah.
gratitude for the love and the care that my dad was receiving. And
Wow.
even though that didn't change anything, I mean, he was still going to die, me having that gratitude just really helped to like just soften my heart. It really helped me to just drop into my body and just to be present and to also think about, this is something that I learned too, is that it could be worse and that I'm grateful that it's not.
Yeah.
So I was grateful that I had all of this bonus time with my dad. He was diagnosed and they said he had a year and a half to live, but
Mm.
he lived, I think,
Wow.
over 4 years. So I'm like, that was bonus time.
Yeah.
And then the fact that I was able to be with him during his last days. And, like, what if I was traveling and I couldn't be with him? And so when I thought about all of the things that, even though I wasn't happy about the situation, I was so grateful for that it wasn't worse because it could have been a lot worse. And I was grateful that it
Yeah.
wasn't.
That's an awesome like reframe, and it takes perspective, and
Hmm.
it's like people often think, and I'm guilty of this, is like that gratitude, you have to be smiling on your face and like it has to look a certain way. But
Right.
it's like you said, you were crying, and you explored
Yeah.
that, and it was like gratitude isn't always like a certain state. It could be
Right.
crying, it could be, but it's your mindset behind it. Like, I'm crying
Yeah.
because I'm grateful that these people
Yes.
keep showing up for my dad, that he's a loved and cared
Yeah.
for person. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I'll just add on to that too. My first round with breast cancer, I went through radiation therapy. I did it for like a month. And then on my last day, it's kind of like I graduated because they gave me the certificate that said
Yeah.
congratulations. And I just started to
Awesome.
cry. And then
Yeah.
and the nurse, she's like, "Oh, honey, don't cry." And I'm like, "I'm crying because I'm grateful. Like I'm grateful that I got through treatment and I'm grateful for the love and care of all of the technologists that supported me in that journey and for my husband." So those,
Wow.
even though she saw the tears, she just assumed I was upset. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
I'm just filled with so much gratitude. And then for me, it just comes out in tears.
No, that's awesome because it's like you're
Hmm.
very expressive of your emotions,
Hmm.
like in the moment, and you're not
Yes.
afraid to do that. That's like a courage all on
Yes.
its own. And most
Yes.
people don't have that. Like, it's like, well, you can't be crying in front of, like, no. If you feel it in the moment, like, express it,
Yeah,
because those emotions have to come out in some type of way, in
exactly.
a healthy way. So
Exactly. And I always say I'm a crier. I cry. I mean, of course, I cry when I'm upset or when I'm sad, but I also cry when I'm, really grateful
yeah,
for just something in my life. And it feels so good. To me, it's healing to
yeah,
cry. And it really, when people say, don't cry, I'm like, "Ugh, why not? It's a
yeah.
human thing and it's a release
Well, I'm
and it
like a
feels good.
secret crier, so don't tell anybody.
I won't tell.
All right. So, if fixed mindset's a grumpy goblin named Sticky McNogro, how's your Silva method, like like a growth mindset superhero, kicking its butt to help um, my ADHD brain stop losing socks and self esteem?
Yeah, I think a big thing when I think about mindset, for me, it's all about how we frame our experiences. So, one of the things I say in terms of my podcast is the story you tell yourself about your breast cancer journey shapes your entire experience. And so we can change the
Hmm.
word breast cancer and replace it with anything, because the story we tell ourselves about our experience is going to determine how we navigate that journey. So I think part of it with our mindset is just being aware of the story that we're telling ourselves. And are we telling
Yeah.
ourselves a story that's helpful? Is this story helping us to grow? Is it helping us to feel empowered? Or is the story making us feel bad and maybe tearing us down? And so I think once we can really identify what those thoughts are, then we can recognize, oh, this is a fixed mindset thinking, or this is a growth mindset thinking. But I think it all comes down to that awareness of
Yeah.
how we are interpreting our experiences, and that interpretation will determine if we have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset.
Yeah, definitely. And I can relate because, when I was first introduced to mindfulness from my
Mhm.
ADHD coach, and I was like, one of the things that I developed in it was awareness. And one of the exercises I tried was, I was during a time of depression, and like I didn't have a lot of people checking up on me, or asking me how I was. So I got really depressed about that, and like felt like that connected to my worth. So I was like
Mhm.
sitting there with mindfully being like, and one of the things that like you just talked about was the narrative, and seeing
Yeah.
like these thoughts, or stories that we tell ourselves, they're not necessarily true. um
Right. Exactly.
and you can challenge those stories by asking it, like, is is that really true? Like, is that something that is actually, like, do you really feel that way about yourself? Is there evidence in your life to like make a case for that? If not, then you can move on and see that as a thought. But a lot of
Exactly.
us with ADHD, or in general, like, we do need those stories to define us, who we are. That's part of like how we wake up and
Hmm.
remember who we are, because if we don't have that, it's going to be a scary thing. We can't survive without that. But it's also
Exactly.
can create these issues when we start to believe these narratives.
Exactly. And one thing for me that I find really helpful is having contrasting stories.
Hmm.
So, for example, for me, when I was going through breast cancer, both times I decided that breast cancer was happening for me. It was an opportunity
Yeah.
to learn and grow. Um, and it really made a huge difference because that was my North Star. This is helping me to learn and grow. But when I contrast that with when I called it a work struggle. And for
Yeah.
me, that was perfectionism, just beating myself up and wanting to be
Wow.
perfect and, not make mistakes and things, especially at work. For that story, it was I told myself, this is happening to me. It's happening to me. I have no control. There's nothing I can do.
Hmm.
I felt like a victim of that story. But when I realized with my breast cancer journey, I was telling myself a very empowering story. But with the work
Yeah.
struggle, I was telling myself a very disempowering story. And when I realized that, it was such a light bulb moment, because that's when I really realized I'm creating my experience based on the story I'm telling myself. One side, I'm telling myself a powerful story. Another side, I'm telling myself a disempowering story. I'm the common denominator in that scenario.
Yeah.
And so if I change my story, I'm going to change my experience.
No, definitely, and that's huge, because when you hear the C word, it's like, oh, game over. And for you to have, like, to grow from that, you know,
Yeah.
um, that's huge. You have such a great energy, and we've had conversations before, and I love it, and I'm honestly, honored to have you in my life, and on my show.
Thank you.
And I'm glad you're out there for all those women that need a voice like that. Um, what
Yes.
what really, like, was the sword out of the stone, like King Arthur moment for you, like where you were like, I'm going to take this mantle up.
Yeah, Well, it's and when I got diagnosed in 2017, I got diagnosed in October. So in January of that year, I had a theme for my women's group, and that
Mm,
theme was the year of joy. And so I
nice.
created every month, I had a bucket list of things I wanted to do to create more joy in my life. I love joy. Zest is one of my top strengths. So I get so excited
Yeah.
about joy. And so I'm doing all of these great things throughout the year. And then October rolls around and I got diagnosed with breast cancer. And I'm like, wait, what? Like breast cancer was not on my joy bucket list. Like, what is
I know,
happening?
right?
Like,
Did they not
this
get the
is
memo?
crazy, right? Like, what? This is the year of joy. What's going on? And so I really had a moment and I had
Yeah.
really had to decide, do I cancel? Is like the year of joy over because I got breast cancer? Or is it still the year of joy even though I got breast cancer? And I decided, you know what? It's still the year of joy. And one of the things I did to really reinforce that mindset is I found music that really talked about joy and embodied joy. And that would be my reminder, like, you know what? It is still the year of joy. I'm still going to find ways to create joy. And I think that made a huge difference in how I navigated my journey because I always say I am in love with my breast cancer story. And the
Yeah.
reason is because of
Wow.
how I showed up for myself in that journey. Wasn't
Yeah.
perfect. I mean, I struggled, I still cried, I had a lot of fear, and I was still able to keep it framed in the idea that it's happening for me. This is an opportunity for me to learn and grow, and it's still the year of joy. That
Yeah,
makes
that's
such a difference.
that's awesome. That's a great story. And you know, I definitely, you know, totally can connect with that. So it kind of reminds me of this like Marcus Aurelius. It's like it's not what happens, the fortune's not in what happens to you, like,
Mhm.
and I'm definitely botching this, but like it's somewhere along the lines of, it's how you show up for those
Yes.
moments,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you really showed up in a big way because like for me, like I'd say like my biggest, like the biggest obstacle for me is always going to be me. Like I can
Mm,
tear anything down just even quicker than I've ever built it up, and it doesn't matter.
mhm,
Like like that's why I have to have people in my life that I talk to. Are
mhm.
there moments for you like that? That I mean, I'm sure like there was some depression involved in like getting that diagnosis. How did you overcome that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think one I'll share a quick story. I was a contractor at Google and I had been diagnosed and I was at lunch. I was sitting by myself and I was just really feeling sorry for myself in
Wow.
that moment. Like I was kind of crying and I would see other people walking by, kind of laughing or doing their thing. And I'm sitting here thinking, people have no idea like what I'm going through. You know, I
Yeah.
have breast cancer. I'm going to go through radiation. I might need chemo. And then my contract is ending. I got to get another job. So like all of these things were like weighing on me. And
Yeah.
I was feeling down and really
Yeah.
defeated. And so in that moment, I got up to take my stuff to the trash. And as I was walking, I passed by a bulletin board. And the bulletin board changed everything because I saw a sign. Literally, I saw a sign that said Googlers living with cancer or something like that. And it stopped me in my tracks because in that moment, I saw that sign. I realized I'm not alone. Like, I'm not the only one that's going through something really difficult. And that just helped me to, that made a huge difference for me. And I even took a picture of that sign
Mm.
because I'm like, I want to capture this moment so that I remember. Because I think when I felt depressed during my breast cancer journey, it was because I felt separate. I felt like I was the only one. No one else is going through this. I think
Yeah.
feeling separate and feeling, again, I'm the only one, that is the reason that I felt really bad. But once I realized there's lots of other people that are navigating not only breast cancer, but cancers or something really challenging. And that just help me to see that again, I'm not alone and that I do have lots of support. Lots of support. And so I would reach out, of course, to my husband. I had a women's group. I would often post in there and tell people, I'm having a tough day and asking for support. And that helped a lot. It helped a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah, that you had that support and you were able to see
Mhm.
that. Did you frame the photo?
I didn't, but I still have it in my phone. One of the things I on my phone is I just have a album that I just labeled breast cancer. I have a whole bunch of my breast cancer
Oh.
pictures in there. But my very first round with breast cancer, I decided to take selfies for like during every appointment because I
Mm.
just wanted to have kind of a record of how I was doing. And by taking a selfie, I could really see my eyes and I could see, how are you? Like, are you okay? Are you like in pain? Are you upset? Like, what's going on? Because to me, that shows up in our face. So I took selfies for pretty much every appointment. And so that I think that was something that really made a big difference because then I could go back and refer to these pictures to see how I was doing throughout my journey. So I have all of those pictures and it's really fun.
That's awesome. So
Hmm.
yeah, and it's great how you were able to change that negative, like such a huge thing. Like cancer
Hmm.
has such a negative vibe to it, and you've
Right.
almost like changed that narrative. Like, and that's exactly
Yes.
what you're talking about with the growth mindset. Um,
Hmm.
so if my ADHD brain's like stuck in hyperdrive in Mos Eisley traffic, how's your Silva method like Yoda teaching me to use the force? Say flipping negativity bias into a growth mindset lightsaber. Any alpha state Jedi mind tricks to help keep me chill before I force chuck my keys into a sarlacc pit?
Yeah, I think the first part is awareness, is just being aware of what our state is, being aware of what we're thinking and aware of how we're feeling. And I think too, when we have that awareness and then when we pair that with self-compassion, that makes a huge difference. Because I think a lot of times when we're in this state, in this negative state or fixed mindset, we're ruminating, we might be beating ourselves up, we might be catastrophizing, which just
Yeah.
makes things worse. And what I've noticed is when I um, take time to pause and I'm aware of what I'm thinking and I speak kindly to myself. And I often say, I'll say, I'll talk to myself and say, I got you, girl. Like, it's okay. Like, and I'll hug myself. Self
Mm.
soothing is something that really makes a big difference too. But I think pausing and being aware of what we're thinking is the first step. And I think too, if let's say we're at a -2 in terms of how we're feeling or in terms of our state, I think the next step is to get to zero, just kind of get to neutral instead of trying to all of a sudden like flip the switch and be positive. I think it's a more gradual process to
Yeah.
go kind of just to neutral, like, okay, everything is okay in this moment. And, and then we can gradually kind of inch our way up into more of a positive state or into a growth mindset. But I think often we want to flip it and we just all of a sudden want things to be better. And that's not
Yeah.
always how it works. We have to be patient and gentle with ourselves and have that compassion. And I think that's why having that positive self-talk is so important.
No, that's great. Because I definitely resonate with that. Like it's for me like depression's like a wave. It's like it
Mhm.
can be like a tidal wave at times. Where it's
Yeah.
like there's nothing I can do to flip that. Like we're
Hmm.
emotional beings. Like we're supposed to feel emotions, and depression
Yeah.
is part of that, or sadness is part of
Hmm.
that, anger is part of that.
Yeah.
And those things can be used in positive
Hmm.
ways. But it's like
Yeah.
being aware, and like I often tell myself like it's okay to feel this
Yes.
way. Like, but my
Yeah.
mind's like, well, you've done so well with this mindfulness and character strengths. You've taken this, and this shouldn't be a thing anymore. like,
Right.
you
Right.
know, like what? There must be something wrong with the way you're doing it, or
Right.
forget
Right.
practicing anymore because it's not
Hmm.
working. It's obviously,
Hmm.
but it's like it's like I'm forgetting that like where I've been able to go and like how
Yes.
how much less effect it has on me, how like the power that it has on me to continue to,
Mhm.
at least I'm not making like decisions to, destroy things in my life anymore.
Mhm.
I'm willing to
Yeah.
pause, like you said, and just
Mhm.
sit in the emotions because like they've got
Yeah.
to work. I've got to work through those and there will be another side,
Mhm.
So
You, one thing I just wanted to go back when you were talking about how depression comes in waves.
yeah,
One of the things I've noticed too, one of my cats passed away, and
wow,
of course, just devastating. It's just
it's
so
awful.
upsetting. And yeah, and one of the things I recognized was grief was coming in waves as well. And so I would often say to my husband, like, here comes a wave of grief. It just sometimes it would just
Yeah,
it would come over me, and I would just feel it, and it would just be just so upsetting, and I would just cry and just let it out, and then it would kind of go away, and then it would come back later and then go away. But what I realized in that process, if I just allow it to be there and not push it away, not be upset about it, but I mean, not be upset that it's there, but just to allow myself to cry,
yeah,
it made such a difference because I wasn't fighting it. I mean, I wasn't happy, but I wasn't pushing it away. I wasn't resisting
no,
it. And then even when I went through chemo, I decided with chemo, I wanted to go through it mindfully. Like no one wants to have chemo, and luckily my chemo, I wasn't
much less.
getting sick.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wasn't getting sick in that way, but I was really, really nauseated. And so when I would have a lot of nausea, I would say to my husband, "Here comes another wave of nausea." And I noticed if I allowed myself to just be present with it, to self soothe, and
mm.
to give myself some positive self talk, and it made such a difference. It didn't take the nausea away, but I wasn't making it worse
Yeah.
by fighting it and being angry with it. I was just allowing it to be there. I was comforting myself, and then eventually the nausea would pass. It came back, but it would pass. And so I would just remind myself nothing lasts forever. Just allow it to be here now, and then I can move forward. And that it made such a difference. Made such a difference when I navigated chemo.
I can imagine. It's like, well, I'm gonna be open to this experience instead of trying to fight it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
whenever I do that, it's like it becomes a lot easier, even though nothing is really
Mm-hmm.
changed about it.
Right. Right. It makes such a difference. And that's really what I want to do in terms of helping women navigate breast cancer, because so often it's about fighting. You're fighting breast cancer. And I just think about, what does that even mean? Like if I'm fighting chemo, what does that look
Yeah,
like? To me, that's resistance. It's not accepting what is. It just doesn't, I don't want to be in the energy of fighting. And so for me, that's where that mindfulness comes in, because the actual definition that we learned in our course is it's the self-regulation of attention with an attitude of curiosity, openness, and acceptance. And so that I think is so key in navigating challenges.
yeah. No, I definitely, when I first discovered mindfulness, I was like, this is like the thing for, especially, I mean, everybody can have it, but like ADHD people
Hmm.
in particular, because we're so creative, like we can like it can become so infinite in like the ways that it's applied. Like recently I've tried to incorporate like mindful eating into almost every
Mm,
time that I eat. Um, sometimes I forget to do it. Sometimes it's just not feasible, with my
hmm.
schedule. Um, but it's like when I do it, it's like it becomes a different experience altogether. Just like
Yeah.
not being on the phone, not really, coming back to the moment, and like enjoying every bite.
Yes.
It's insane, like how much
Hmm.
like that has like helped, my days at work, coming in.
Hmm.
So, what's the wildest thing you've seen someone unlock in that awareness zone, or
Let's see. So
yourself?
someone, let's see. So something I've unlocked because of mindfulness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say I definitely something related to my breast cancer journey. I would say I think mindfulness really helped me. I think back to the story. I think mindfulness really helped me to be more aware of the stories that I'm telling myself about my
Yeah.
experiences. I think for me that's been the biggest thing. And when I was talking earlier, mindfulness help me to see the contrast in my thinking. And so like for
Mm.
example, with breast cancer, I was very compassionate to myself. I was almost like mama bear. Like when my mind would want to, catastrophize or maybe, try to beat myself up or something. When I was going through breast cancer, like mama bear would not have that. We'd be like, we're not going there. We're not doing that. We're not talking to ourselves like that. I was very protective and really took
Yeah.
care of myself. When I was navigating the what I called the work struggle, which was really perfectionism, I was the complete opposite where I would beat myself up. I thought it was happening to me. And I think mindfulness really helped me to see that how I'm creating those experiences. And it also helped me to recognize in the perfectionist side, if I would notice some of those tendencies coming up, I can now ask myself, how would like breast cancer Shannon handle that? Because I was very
Mm.
different when I was navigating breast cancer. And so that breast cancer journey really helps me to frame or look at my other life experiences through a different lens. Because breast cancer, again, I was so compassionate. I had my back. But then I noticed, especially the first time when breast cancer, when I was finished with all my treatment, I noticed that the self-care Shannon, the breast cancer Shannon, and being very compassionate
Mm.
towards myself, that kind of started to fade. And the
Wow.
perfectionism just kind of came back into play, and I just thought it was because it was breast cancer. Like breast cancer is the reason that it's like I was giving credit to breast cancer instead of giving credit to myself for making
Yeah.
those choices and being mindful. And so when I got diagnosed the second time, a part of me was secretly, I mean, I didn't want breast cancer, but I was secretly kind of
Uh.
glad because I could be that person again. I could be
Yeah.
the Shannon that was really compassionate, not beating herself up. And so as that journey was ending, I really focused on consciously bringing what I learned in that breast cancer journey to just my whole life. So that breast cancer Shannon was just Shannon
Oh, that's
moving forward.
inspiring. And I love that part about the mama bear. Like it reminds me of like the Despicable Me, where she's going
Yeah.
in like Mama Bear's here. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like you don't want to mess with Mama Bear, and
Hmm.
to create that like that person or that personality that stands up for you, and you to notice like
Yeah.
that, like the changes. And I'm sure mindfulness helped you be aware of the differences.
Yes.
So
Hmm. Hmm.
it's like mindfulness is like herding cats for many people with ADHD. It's
Mm.
what's a sneaky Silva trick to stay present? Like say while I'm zoning out mid podcast, that feels like monk, feels less monk and more maverick.
Mm. Yeah, I would say something that helps me. Um, I think part of it too is I think of it as I'm returning to the present and also just reminding myself that no one stays in the present moment. I think in the MBSP course or mindfulness based strengths practice course, Brian, our
Mm-hmm.
instructor, talked about how we're only in the present moment for like 7 or 9 seconds at a time or something. It's a really short
Yeah.
amount of time. And so it's always about returning to the present. And so I think for me, just remembering that is really key because it could be so easy to want to beat myself up about not being present. But when I recognize that we're often not present and it's about returning to the present moment, then I can celebrate, oh, I'm back in the moment. So I think something that helps me to return to the moment is breathing. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll notice that I'm holding my breath,
Mm.
and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, let me return present. So I think that is something that helps me. And something else is, especially if I'm in a conversation with someone, is to pause, and to look at the person is something that helps me. Or sometimes even just moving my fingers, just to get
Mm.
my body moving, to kind of remind me that I'm awake, I'm alive, and to be present. I think those are some things that help me.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like I get that, like, and then those are great tools. It's like it's impossible to stay in the present moment. And there's benefits
Hmm.
to, we do need to think about the future in order to plan, and
Hmm.
we do need to reminisce about the past in order to not make the
Hmm.
same mistakes, and to
Exactly.
reflect on like our progress and our growth. So it's like
Hmm.
it's finding that balance for me. That's like, okay, am I doing it enough, or like,
Hmm.
am I trying too hard? Am I being too hard on myself? And it's
Hmm.
like I don't think we'll ever get to that point of being like that true balance. But it's like just striving to mindfulness is, and that's what I love about mindfulness is like they talk about it as being, it's not, nobody's like a master at it. There's no
Right.
one right way to do it. It's where
Hmm.
you're at, and the fact that you're trying to do it is a huge step.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because it's like I know the space that it's been able to create in my life and in my days. Like, I
Hmm.
don't have to
Hmm.
view work as like, oh my God, I have to go through that whole thing, and it's gonna be like drowning all day. Now I'm
Right.
like, well, I can take a break whenever I want to. I can just sit there
Hmm.
and breathe if I remember to do that,
Yeah.
and the more that I practice. So what about like the maintenance part? How do you attack, like, what helps you to continue to maintain the practice to keep it strong?
Yes, I think a bit. I love the idea of practice, and I love practicing. So yeah, I get so excited about this. So I use my iPad. I have an app called Good Notes, so I can use my pencil and write. I love to write. So I'm a big journaler. So every morning I get up in the morning and I write down something I'm grateful for. And one of the things I do with most of my prompts is, say, for gratitude, I'll write, I am grateful for, and whatever I'm grateful for. And then I'll say, because, and then I'll write that. And then I'll say, this is
Hmm.
meaningful because for me, that gets a lot deeper. Because if I say, oh, I'm grateful for my morning coffee, like, that's great. But I'm grateful for my morning coffee because I get to enjoy it with
Yeah.
my husband. We have our coffee. I can elaborate on that. And then I can say, this is meaningful because it's quality time with my husband, and I love to make him his cappuccino and bring it to him in the morning, and it strengthens our relationship, or whatever it might be. But for me, adding the meaning behind it, for me, gets me
Yeah.
really excited. So I always
That's
write down
awesome.
what I'm grateful for. I write down empowering quotes or affirmations that can support me. Like, one of the ones I've been writing down is, I can let it be hard. I can let something be hard and not make it mean anything about me, which I love that quote, or that affirmation. So I'll like write down different affirmations that really support me with the current state or my day. And then I write down, what I'm going to accomplish today based on what I wrote on my calendar. And I'll often attach some character strengths to that.
Yeah.
Like, for example, being on this podcast. Like, one of the things that I wrote down in terms of a character strength is, being really curious,
Hmm.
about the questions that are coming up, and, using my zest, and, being grateful, and, things like that. So I like to attach my character strength to my tasks. That's really helpful. One of my other favorite prompts is, I'm proud of myself because. And for me, I love this prompt because it's just an opportunity to acknowledge something that I've done that I feel good about. And it can be something big or something small, but I always write that prompt, I'm proud of myself because, and then I'll add, this is meaningful because. And then I always include the character strengths that I'm using. And
Mm,
one other thing too, in terms of practice, I love to say, in the past, I used to do this, but now I'm doing this because that shows my growth. And it allows me to recognize, label, and affirm my strengths. It allows me to savor my experiences. So, those are some of the ways that I maintain my practice. Because it's
that's
to me, it's
awesome.
all about practice. If I'm not practicing on a daily basis, then I won't be able to access those tools in the moment when I need them. So
Yeah,
I feel like
definitely.
everything I'm doing, it's like a dry run. It's just a dry run until like the moment when you need it, then you have access to it because you've been using them.
Yeah, no, I love that. You
Mhm.
know, it's like it's like when you think about music, it's like practice is
Mhm.
play.
Yeah.
So creating like that play, like this is just play. This is helping me
Hmm.
get better. And it's
Yeah.
also like, using those tools and like, because like I notice when I'm not as, into my foundation, like I'm more unhinged. Like when it
Hmm.
comes to like how I am and like what's going on with my brain, and it's more out of control. So
Hmm.
I definitely realize like the value of continuing, like, because not every day is going to be like the way I would like it to be, but
Hmm.
those days help reinforce the practice.
Exactly.
So I'm
Exactly.
gonna play like a quick game if you're down.
Mm.
It's called
Yep,
Strength
I'm ready.
Safari. So
Ooh.
you're on a jungle trek to spot character strengths. I'll toss you one, like my curiosity for random trivia, and you zap
Mm.
one of yours, like say zest. Uh, please tell us how to flex that strength to dodge the shadows. You're not good enough. Growl. Ready? Go.
Oh, okay. So I respond to that with a character strength.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would respond to that with honesty. Like, is that really true? Like, what evidence do you have to know that that's really the honest truth?
Yeah. So it's like just bouncing it off with a question. That's
Mm-hmm.
good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would have probably been like, yeah, no, that's a good one. I can't top that one.
And the cool thing, it's like you probably could use any of them. It's just a matter of what fits for you in the moment.
So with strength spotting, um,
Hmm.
and that's something that I'm continuing to work on, in others, and incorporating that. Um, what do you do in that situation? Do you try to strength spot people that you don't necessarily vibe with, or their behavior might rub you the wrong way? What do you
Like
do in
people
those
I know, or just
situations?
people in life, or like
Yeah,
friends.
just people that maybe you work with, or a friends, like somebody that's just maybe a challenge for you to interact with.
Yeah.
They do things
Um.
that like that they don't mean to do, that they're not
Mm,
intentionally doing to upset you, but it does because of
mm.
you know it just affects you in a certain way.
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind is if I notice that I'm triggered by someone's actions or behaviors or something that they say, one of the things I hope that I do is recognize it as a hot button,
Mm,
which means, it's a strengths hot button. And so one of the ways I can look at it, instead of looking at the person and thinking, they're wrong, I don't like them, I don't like what they said, I can think of it as what strength do I feel is being over or underused in that situation. So, for example,
mm,
sometimes maybe I'm watching something on TV and say someone says something, and I might think, man, they're so ungrateful, or they, why are they so, not thankful for, the house that they have, or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, so that what sometimes that helps me. So I can turn it on myself and be like, okay, I'm triggered because I'm thinking they're underusing gratitude. And for me, gratitude is a very important strength. And when someone underuses it, it can make me upset, type of thing. So I think recognizing that is something that is really helpful for me. And then I can also do it on the other end. So I can, someone might be doing something and I don't like it, And so
Mm.
I might think, oh, in my opinion, they're overusing their zest. So
Yeah.
I can reframe it in the terms of character strengths, because then it's not a negative, because it's implying the person has zest, but perhaps I'm thinking they're overusing it. And so
Yeah.
that's a me problem, not a them, not their problem. It's me. And so
Yeah.
that way I'm not projecting my anger on someone else. I'm recognizing, oh, I'm feeling annoyed because of what I'm thinking about how they're, using their strength.
So
So that's something that helps me.
how is somebody you overs like too zesty? Like how does that look?
Sometimes I'm too zesty. um, yeah, so I'll just share an example of me being overly zesty. So I typically wake up before my husband.
Yeah.
And so say I'm up an hour, couple hours before him. And, by then I've already been journaling. Maybe I've had a breakthrough. I get excited about stuff. So he would wake up and come into the living room, and I'd be like, oh, honey. And I would be going a million miles a minute, like, oh my gosh, and, blah, 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 and telling him all this stuff and asking him questions. And he'd be like,
Yeah.
I like need a minute. Like I just woke up. I need my coffee and
Yeah,
all
he's
of this.
bombarded.
And at
He's being
first,
attacked.
he's bombarded. Yeah. I had good intention. Like I wasn't, trying to be annoying. But it would kind of hurt my feelings. Like, like I'm excited, and he's not rejecting me, but he's not wanting to engage in at that level at that time.
Yeah.
So fast forward, he took the VIA survey, and his zest is number 24, and my zest is in my top five.
Wow.
And I think for me, once I really realized that, I understood first his expression of zest is very different from my expression of zest. And it helped me to realize that to just kind of balance things out, I can use my self regulation to just kind of, stay a little more focused, stay more present, and also use my social intelligence just to read
Mm.
him and to be aware that, what, he just woke up. He's tired, he needs his coffee. He's not ready to like engage in like a deep conversation about anything right now. He just wants to wake up. And by me doing that, it's made such a difference. So now he wakes up in the morning. I kind of lower my voice. I mean, I'm still excited, but I'm not overly excited. I'm like,
Mm.
good morning, honey. And I love to make his cappuccino. So tell him I'm going to get your cappuccino ready. And I make his cappuccino and I bring it to him. And I said, I'm just going to give you space to wake up. And then he does his thing for whatever time. And then I kind of do my thing. And then it's fine.
Yeah.
And and for me, that's been a big lesson of being aware of when I'm overusing my zest. Because if I am, it can be really annoying. And I don't want to
Yeah.
annoy. I don't want to annoy people. So
No,
I'm aware of how I can kind of rein it in
that's
so that I'm more
awesome.
balanced.
That's
Yeah.
like some deep level um mindfulness, character strengths with mindfulness practice.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we met on no, before I say that, like
Hmm.
she was talking about you were talking about the via character strengths
Hmm.
survey. You can actually go on the via character.org and take that, and I highly recommend that. That'll be in the show notes.
Hmm.
um but yeah, we met on a like it was like a question and answer
Hmm.
for the MBSP
Hmm.
um yeah class, and like we're talking about doing your podcast, and I messaged you, and that was pretty awesome how that happened.
Hmm.
um
Yes.
so can you kind of explain, like, because most people are aware of mindfulness, they're not so much aware of character strengths. How do they
Hmm.
combine to create this like amazing magical elixir?
Yeah, oh, I love that description of magical elixir. Yeah, so mindfulness is around, having awareness, and character strengths are the positive parts of our personality, like the things that are really good within us, bravery, perseverance, honesty, things like that. And you can use them individually, but when you bring them together and you make that magical elixir, that is where everything changes. Because um, I think a big part of it, especially with character strengths, people have something called strengths blindness, which means they're
Mm.
not really aware of their character strengths or their strengths. And I think that's because people are focused on weaknesses, focused on
Yeah.
what's wrong. I got to fix my weaknesses. So, a big part of mindfulness is being aware of our strengths and not just knowing that it's on our profile. That's a start. But a next step is to really be able to know that strength in action, to be aware when you're using it or to consciously call on it. And that's where that mindfulness comes in because you can be more intentional and it feels so empowering. Like for me, perseverance is one of my lowest strengths. Doesn't mean I
Mm.
don't persevere. It just means I have to dig kind of deep sometimes to persevere.
Yeah.
And when I'm aware that I'm using my perseverance, so when I have the mindfulness and then I have the character strength of perseverance, when I'm aware that I'm using it, I feel so much more empowered because otherwise I might feel like I'm struggling because I'm not aware that I'm using perseverance, or I might not be aware that I have access to it. So when I have awareness of the strength and that I'm using it, it feels so empowering to be in that state. And also with mindfulness, mindfulness about around being present, we can use character strengths to help support our mindfulness practice. So, for
Yeah.
example, let's say an obstacle for me with practicing mindfulness could be um, my mind gets distracted, which is a common obstacle for anyone practicing mindfulness. So, what I might do is I might say, I'm going to bring my curiosity to my practice. And when I notice that I'm just distracted, I'm just going to just allow myself to be curious about that and then come back to the practice, that type of thing. So, we can
Yeah.
use character strengths to support our mindfulness practice, and we can use mindfulness to support our character strengths. So, when you use them together, it really is that magical elixir.
Yeah, definitely. Like strong mindfulness and character
Hmm.
strengths is like a language all on its own. So it's like, and which I'm
Yes.
still learning,
Hmm.
and you seem to be like a master at it. Like,
I'm still
yeah.
learning, still practicing.
Oh yeah, but that's awesome. And
Mhm.
it's like when you combine the two, it's amazing. Um,
Yeah, it is. And I just wanted to add when you said how character strengths is a language, that's one of the things I love so much about character strengths because it is a language. And of course, it's something that we need to learn and to practice. And to me, it's also something that's intuitive because people know the word kindness. I mean, people know the word bravery. So I think a lot of these character strengths, people know, they've heard of them. They might not know their character strength, or they may not know like the essence of it, but they know the words. So to me, the language is out there, but really being able to fine tune and understand it and then practice those strengths, I think is the next step.
yeah. So, speaking of character strengths, so it can be like a well of strength or an ADHD superpower. Um,
Mm,
how, so what's like one strength you
mhm.
would gift like the listeners to help slay stigma?
A strength to help people with stigma.
Yeah.
I would say to help people not have a stigma around ADHD.
Well, to help them like overcome that stigma of like, not wanting, to talk about what their ADHD is or, because they're afraid of
Yeah.
being perceived wrong or judged or look out,
Okay.
because it's already hard enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the first strength that came to my mind was kindness. Is having compassion for ourselves, treating ourselves with kindness,
Yeah.
and recognizing that, by talking about it, of course, with people that we trust and things like that, it can help us. helps us to feel better and to know that we're not alone. So I think kindness can definitely be one. I would say another one is find something to be grateful for, in the situation, and think about it could be worse, but I'm glad it's not. That's a
Yeah.
really good gratitude prompt to help people. It's one of my favorites. Let me think of another one. I would say another one could be just kind of running through them in my head.
You're fine.
Perspective could be another one, perhaps looking at the big picture and deciding how you want to frame your experience could be another strength to use. Bravery in terms of being
Yeah.
willing to put yourself out there and being willing to have people not understand, or maybe not maybe judge, people, because people might want to judge. But I think being brave and being willing to put yourself out there and to face that if needed, and have your own back. And to me, that's where that kindness and that love come into play. Having your own back no matter what happens.
Yeah.
I think humility as well, recognizing that we're all human, we're not perfect. We all have something that we struggle with that we might need help with, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think
Yeah.
that one could also be another one to help.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
good. You definitely, the biggest thing for me was asking for help. But since I've been able
Mm-hmm.
to do that, that's my biggest strength. Like, is being able to
Mm,
be like, well, I don't know, like maybe I need to talk about this, even though like, I'm doing so well and people see me
mm-hmm.
that, it's like, then it becomes harder to talk about like my struggles and depression. It's like, well, how can you still be feeling that? It was like, that's why I'm doing all this stuff, because it's like,
Yeah.
I, I need, I need to create like a barrier or a
Mm-hmm.
foundation for when that storm hits, because it's
Yes.
going to
Yes.
come. And, like,
Exactly.
unfortunately, that's the way my mind is built,
Mm-hmm.
and, like a lot of it's that's been helping me is like like the compassion and having compassion for others as well, like
Yes.
seeing
Yes.
like that, other people are going through this trauma. Somebody has
Mm-hmm.
some level of trauma, and all we want is to be free of suffering and
Mm-hmm.
pain. And what that looks like
Yes.
for everyone else is different, because
Mm-hmm.
I used to believe that if I had, more money, if I had a better job, if I had a better car, if I had more jewelry, if I had this,
Mm.
then I would be happy. And
Right.
I started getting some of those things, and I was still feeling, like it was never enough. So it's like
Right.
focusing on myself and exploring like who I really am and where this trauma is, and what trauma that I have still buried deep
Mm-hmm.
that I need
Mm-hmm.
to still process. It's
Yeah.
years and decades of trauma that I never knew was really trauma, and I never
Mm-hmm.
knew that, that I needed to be healed, that it was this, the way that I was living wasn't
Yeah.
very healthy. So it's like understanding that in others is like, wow, they're like people too that have a
Yeah.
mother, a father, pain, suffering.
Mm-hmm.
They've had, and they all have strengths. So
Yeah.
it's like a very deep process.
Mm-hmm.
And that just came from like just mindfulness and studying about like self compassion, in particular.
Yes. Self-compassion. Kristen Neff, she wrote a great book. She's written several books on self-compassion, and I discovered her during my first breast cancer journey. And that
Wow.
was just made a big difference. Just having that compassion for yourself. And like you said, having that compassion for others is so, so key. And I think a lot of it to me still goes back to the story we tell ourselves, how we interpret circumstances in our life. One of the things that I learned a lot about in a coaching program was, again, how we interpret our circumstances. So like breast cancer is a circumstance, but how I interpret that circumstance makes a big difference. You know,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So I think it all goes back to the story we tell ourselves
Yeah, the
about our
narratives.
circumstances. Mhm.
No,
Yep.
it's great. And
And that's why I think we have to reinforce the positive stuff and practice all of the good stuff because we have a negativity bias that always wants to make us think about what's wrong and the problems and the weaknesses. So we have to consciously counter that
yeah,
balance so that we can focus on the
yeah.
positive and heal.
Yeah, and it's not going anywhere. Our brain's a problem solver, and it's
Yep,
just trying to protect us with this negative mindset.
exactly. Hmm.
So we have to kind of treat it with kid gloves sometimes, and
Hmm.
come at it with different questions, and allow
Yeah,
those things to happen. So I
exactly.
love this conversation. It was great.
Me too.
Unfortunately, we're at the top of the hour, and so
Wow, that went
Shannon,
fast.
thank you. You're a mindset wizard. What's
Oh,
next for you, and where can my audience find you?
thank you. I would say what's next, I want to continue with my podcast and reach more women. I really want to create a movement and shift the narrative around breast cancer. So, to shift from just the idea of fighting breast cancer to really reimagine how you can navigate it and really make it this transformative experience that really changes who you are and helps you to become the person that you want to be. So that's really what I'm up to. And my
That's awesome.
podcast is called Breast Cancer Reimagined, and you can find it on iTunes or the Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music,
Yeah,
iHeartRadio. Yeah.
that's
And
awesome.
I can
I'll
give you
put
a
that in the
link.
show notes. Yeah,
Perfect. Thank you.
yeah, that's
And
awesome.
it's a daily practice. A
Yeah,
daily
no,
practice
you
with
getting
this
out
work.
there and doing that is brave. Shows a lot of
Thank
courage,
you.
especially with all the things that you have, but you have a voice that's needed. And I definitely am. We're podcast buddies for life.
Yes, you got it.
So, what's
Love
one
it.
tiny challenge for our warriors to try, like a 1 minute alpha state dip to spark joy this week? What would you challenge
Ooh,
them to
I
do?
I would love joy. I would say one thing is to ask yourself the question, what is one thing I can do today, no matter how small, that will bring more joy into my life? I think a big
Yeah,
thing
that's
with
awesome.
joy is people want to find it, like they're looking for it, but to me, we have to create it. So asking that
Mm,
question, what is one thing I can do today, no matter how small, that will help me create more joy in my life or help me create more joy in my day? Just asking that question and pick something and then do it. Doesn't have to be huge,
just
just
do it.
something that you think will bring more joy into your day. Like for me, having my cappuccino in my special cup that says she believed she could, so she did.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Well, thank you again for coming on the
Thank
show.
you.
And, again, I'm honored and flattered.
Thank you. Thank you. So happy to be here. This has been such a great conversation.
Yeah, that was amazing. An amazing story of perseverance through a scary, a scary place such as breast cancer. Not only once, but twice victorious, a real champion. And she's even got her own podcast. So check that out. Breast Cancer Reimagined. It's fantastic. Again, take part in that challenge. Do one thing that brings joy in your life because we can't get enough of that. And let me know how that goes. So again, subscribe, like, and may the source be with you.